Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to think the smell of old books was proof that history wasn't dead. Glue and linen and dust, a little like a church and a little like a baseball card shop. Kids would wander into my classroom at Brookside High and cull at the museum, then flop into their seats and tell me about their lives in the impatient accent of teenagers. I taught the Civil War with salt and pepper shakers, the New Deal with Monopoly money, and the Constitution with a stack of sticky notes that said rights on one side and responsibilities on the other. No one else wanted first period. I loved it. Sleepy kids tell the truth by accident. My name is Michael Turner. I teach history. That sentence still tastes right in my mouth, like something that got baked overnight and came out ready when the bell rang. I was also, at least until the trouble, married to the principal. Rachel Turner wore authority the way some people wear cashmere. She could end a hallway whisper with a raised eyebrow from 50 feet. Parents called her dynamic at board meetings and tough in the carpool line. Teachers tiptoed. Students speculated. I loved her once the way you love a lighthouse, for the certainty. She knew where she was going and expected the tide to respect that. We met when I was 27 and she was 30, both fresh to Brookside, both wearing our best first-week outfits and our most convincing smiles. She liked that I made my own coffee, that I could fix a squeaky cabinet door, that I had opinions about curriculum and pie. I liked that she could talk to any human on the planet for 6 minutes and learn everything that mattered. We married in a small ceremony at the Methodist Church on Maple, invited more teenagers than adults, and danced under a big banner that said "Go Owls." Because the custodial staff loved me enough to lend it for a night. The early years were good. I taught. She led. On Sundays we'd walk the high school track and dream in laps. We would build programs. We would put Brookside on the map. We would produce the kind of graduates who come back at 30 with good suits and the impulse to hug their favorite teacher. Life was a syllabus I was excited to hand out. Time, the eraser, started working in the margins. Rachel's compliments turned into corrections. "You're good with kids," she'd say over the sink, rinsing wine glasses, "but you could be more ambitious." Ambition, to Rachel, meant moving up the ladder, assistant principal, district this, state that. My ladder lived in a supply closet. It reached precisely to the place where the poster of the Bill of Rights kept peeling. I didn't want to leave the room where kids laughed at my jokes and asked real questions. The further she climbed, the more she looked down on my rung. "You're comfortable," she'd say, "the way someone says you're damp. You could do more. You could lead." "I am leading," I'd say. 30 at a time. Brookside moved from one school year to the next like a sleepy parade. We had our rituals. Homecoming floats that shed tissue paper down Main Street. Jazz band in the courtyard on Fridays in May. Teachers in animal onesies coaxing kids into buying yearbooks. I ran the history club. Rachel ran everything else. Then the whisper came, as whispers do, wearing the cologne of truth and the haircut of gossip. "Have you noticed Ms. Turner and Mr. Myers?" a gym teacher said in the break room one October, like he was asking if I'd noticed the weather. "Mr. Myers the psych?" I said, licking peanut butter off a spoon that had lived in my desk since Obama. "School psychologist, yes," he said. "They're close." I wanted to laugh it off. Ethan Myers was handsome in a catalog way, with hair that accepted product and sweaters that made people trust him. He had a gentle voice and a trophy for most calming presence that students snuck him as a joke. He and Rachel spent time together for official reasons, then unofficial ones. It didn't look wrong until it did. People don't cheat loudly. They cheat through repetition. The study sessions, the late meetings, the district calls, the crisis of the moment that never resolved. Rachel started missing the stories I told her about my day. She started using the word career the way you use a knife to cut cake, slices for everyone but me. "Your job is cute," she said once, not looking up from her email. "But it's small. I need you to think bigger." "I keep 140 kids interested in the Federalist Papers," I said. "I think big every day before lunch." She smiled, not her warm one. "You know what I mean." Then came the staff meeting. Faculty meetings in public schools are an American genre. Chair leg scrape. The copy machine cries outside the door. Somebody brings muffins that were fresh during the Jackson administration. Rachel stood at the front of the library, clicker in hand, delivering her monthly slideshow, attendance trends, budget updates, a reminder not to prop doors open. I sat with my department, whispering jokes into the margins, as one does. A teacher raised her hand during the QA. "We're hearing a lot about test scores and the new district benchmarks," she said. "How do you balance that with teacher autonomy? With trusting veteran staff to do what they do best?" It was a fair question. It lived on the same block where you find questions like why does the copy code never work and when can I pee? Rachel glanced my way and said, light, into the microphone, "Autonomy is lovely, but sometimes people hide in it. We can't afford to coast. We can't afford hobbyists." A ripple went through the room. She was not done. "Let me be clear," she said. "This school needs leadership, not comfort. We need people willing to step up, not just tell stories to children and call it rigor." My face went hot, the kind of hot you get when the overhead lights find you like you're a moth. People looked at their laps. A few looked at me with that sorry face we reserve for funerals and public spills. I felt the weight of my own name, a bowling ball on a built desk. Then, as if the air were not acidic enough, she moved to professional boundaries. "We also," she said, clearing her throat into the microphone, "must hold ourselves to the highest standards of conduct. If any staff member, engages in behavior that could even be construed as inappropriate, there will be consequences. I do not play with that." She smiled the smile of someone finishing a PSA. Ethan, seated near the back with his calm sweater, stared at his shoes and chewed what might have been a regret or just gum. Afterward I took the long way back to my classroom, around the courtyard where the statue of our owl looks like it knows things it isn't saying. Rachel intercepted me near the trophy case. "You embarrassed me," she said, her voice so flat airplanes could land on it. "You sat there with that face." "My face," I said, "came with me from birth." She stepped closer, the smell of citrus shampoo and victory. "Michael," she said, very softly now, "do not make a scene about anything you think you know. You know how this town talks. You know how the board feels about me. You know where your paychecks come from. If you get in my way, I will make a phone call, and you will be walked out before last period." "On what grounds?" Her mouth did a mean little quirk. "Pick your poison. There are a dozen girls who would say you made them uncomfortable if I asked. Ethan could write a report that would turn your touching hugs into a pattern. Believe me. Don't test me. A person can threaten to burn down your life with a matchbook labeled policy. A person can dress blackmail in district letterhead words." I stood there, pulse in my gums, and felt for the first time the cold outline of a decision I did not want. I went back to my room. The kids were in the hallway, a herd of humanity moving like weather. My door was a little sanctuary with a banner over it that said "You are welcome in this room." I closed it and sat at my desk and stared at the stapler. The stapler had more solidity than I did. I wrote "I quit" on a sticky note and stuck it to the monitor. Then I took it down and stuck it on my arm. Then I put it in the trash because the trash looked like the only thing in my jurisdiction. At home, Rachel was efficient and cheerful for 2 nights, like a weather woman insisting the hurricane was just refreshing wind. On the 3rd night she stayed out late for a student crisis. That crisis used a cologne Ethan favored, one I had smelled in the counseling office when I walked a grieving kid down to his patient leather chair. I sat in our kitchen, thought about my father, who coached Little League and loved quietly, and considered the idea that I was a man in a small town with a wife who was going to ruin him. People ask me if there was a moment when something changed in me. There was. It happened Tuesday afternoon, during my 5th period, while we were doing a simulation of the Constitutional Convention. Madison, who wants to be a lawyer, was James Madison. A boy named Alex, who prefers talking to the ceiling, was Alexander Hamilton. A quiet freshman named Kelly, who usually hides in her hoodie like a turtle, raised her hand and said, "Mr. Turner, who protects the people when the people in charge are the ones doing the wrong thing." The room went silent. Someone's highlighter squeaked. I opened my mouth to deliver the civics answer about checks and balances, branches and courts, the citizenry, the press. What came out instead was a different voice, my inside voice dragged to the microphone. "We do," I said. "We document. We tell the truth. We bring it to the right room." There it was. A little line stretching awake in my ribs. I told myself to stop dramatizing my life like a Netflix limited series. Then I went home and pulled the fireproof box from the hall closet, the one with passports and the deed to the house and the photo of us at the Methodist church. I added a fresh notebook. I wrote at the top of the first page, "If they're going to write a story, let me write it first." The thing about being a history teacher is you respect primary sources. No hearsay. No, my cousin said. Originals. Dates. Names. Receipts. I already understood the building better than most. Teachers live in schools the way theater techs live in theaters, inside the seams. The cameras in the halls aimed at the doors, not at the offices. The microphones in the conference rooms captured board meetings flawlessly and accidentally grabbed a lot of before and after. The inventory system for the textbook budget kept better time than my wristwatch. The student activity accounts balanced like a gymnast, unless someone nudged it. I did not break laws. I walked through the doors I was allowed to open, listened carefully, and respected the small dog called procedure. Step 1, I got my own house in order. I filed everything, lesson plans, emails, student praise notes, even silly cards kids had given me after passing a push, into a neat archive labeled professional conduct. I forwarded a few messages of Rachel's to my personal email, only the ones about budget and policy that affected my job. I made a list of dates when I had been home alone while Rachel was at district events. Step 2, I paid attention to spending. Our district uses a procurement card for side-level purchases, reconciled monthly. The card logs are public records if you ask nicely. I asked nicely. I asked the bookkeeper, a woman named Denise who once baked me a birthday cake shaped like a Roman forum, how to read the ledger so I could make sure my department wasn't overspending. Denise, who keeps secrets like a tomb, showed me how to filter by vendor and cardholder. There were charges that made sense: copy paper, toner, poles for the new volleyball net. Then there were ones that blanked: catering orders for off-site wellness retreats, flower arrangements labeled as parent engagement, an invoice to Tried Consulting for climate survey analysis that mirrored a free tool I'd used with my 7th graders. I asked no questions. I printed quietly. Step 3, Audio. School board meetings are public. Rachel liked to hold pre-meetings with her inner circle in the conference room to align messaging. That room had a microphone system installed last year for hybrid meetings, a system that recorded to a district drive by default. If you knew how to ask, those recordings were all there, labeled by date. Thank you, technology. I requested the files for the last 6 months to catch up on procedural updates, because being polite is the armor of the righteous. I listened at night with headphones, the way you listen to a friend's band, hoping there will be an encore and fearing there will be a flub. Flubs abounded. Rachel encouraging her assistant to massage some data on discipline disparities so we don't set off the activists. Ethan suggesting that a couple of staff complaints could be reframed as growth opportunities if they landed in his office first. A committee chat that drifted into how to code a purchase order so a vendor gets through without bouncing back from district. The words weren't knives, they were forks. Useful, every day. But intent leaves fingerprints. Step 4, Video. I'm not James Bond. I'm a man with an old iPhone and a conscience. I never planted anything in private spaces. I didn't bug offices or tape phones under chairs. That would have been not only illegal but ridiculous. What I did do was position my camera, in my own classroom or the public hallway, whenever a conversation was likely to happen within earshot that pertained to me or the management of the building. Rachel liked to hold court in doorways. Ethan loved to counsel in corridors. Life, for them, was a stage. I let them perform. In one clip, a senior administrator from the district stopped by for a visit, and in the casual chat you get in a doorway, Rachel mentioned that some numbers from the Student Activity Fund could be consolidated under General Operations for Optics. The administrator chuckled a professional chuckle of back-scratching and said, "Just don't get caught moving strings between pockets." It was the kind of line you forget as soon as you say it. My phone, as sober as a judge, remembered. Collecting evidence is like fishing in a pond everyone swears is empty. You sit with your line and get bug-bitten and mad. Then the float tips. Then you pull up one small flash, then another. Then a heavy thing tugs that makes you straighten your back. The heavy thing was an invoice from Triad Consulting for student mental health services, signed by Ethan, approved by Rachel, billed at $14,800 for a weekend retreat that several staff attended. When I asked a counselor I trusted if she'd gone, she laughed. "I spent that weekend bleaching vomit out of my carpet," she said. Senior lock-in. I checked the dates. Rachel and Ethan were out of town that weekend. Their photos had surfaced on Facebook, matching selfies at a resort an hour away, tagged "Work hard, restore heart." Triad Consulting's address, per the invoice, matched the P.O. box at that resort's hotel. If this were fiction, fireworks would go off. In real life, my stomach did a slow roll and then got very quiet. I ate dry Cheerios out of a mug. I emailed myself copies. I printed 2 sets and put one in the fireproof box. I considered quitting every day. The little sticky note I quit? Visited different parts of the house, mirror, fridge, car dashboard. The inner lion, though, had gotten comfortable and now slept lightly, waking to any noise. I fed him with small truths and slept, some nights, like a man who'd earned the privilege. Rachel stayed confident. She moved through the halls like a parade marshal. She dropped lines at dinner about my board and the community's trust. She kissed my cheek when she left for an executive session, smelling like a department store. She threatened once more in the bathroom doorway, toothbrush in hand, "If you say one word to anyone, I will make sure you never teach again. Do not test me, Michael." "You already did," I said. And I passed. I made one call that wasn't to a lawyer. I called Fran, an English teacher who had worked for the district since the Reagan era and who served as union rep because literally no one else would. Fran taps her foot when she's annoyed. Fran tapped through my whole story and then said, "Sweetie, save your breath for the board. They won't believe rumors, but they'll read documents. Remember to print things. Printers, unlike people, don't panic under pressure." Board meetings in Brookside are public theater. The board sits on a dais like minor gods. The superintendent smiles like a dentist. The audience is an uncomfortable mix of teachers, parents, retirees who have chosen a hobby, and teenagers doing a civics assignment. You get 3 minutes at the microphone. 3 minutes is both nothing and eternity. I signed up for public comment. I wore the one tie that makes me look like I have a 401k. I brought a binder with tabs. I did not bring melodrama. It brings itself. Rachel sat at the end of the dais, calm as a lake on a postcard. Ethan sat in the row behind her with a folder of forms he could weaponize if needed. The meeting droned, bus contracts, the debate team's travel budget, a parent furious about Shakespeare. I waited. Denominations of time changed. 2 different people asked about the condition of the softball field. Then they called my name. I walked to the lectern. The microphone made a little feedback squeal to get everyone's attention on my behalf. I looked at the clock. 3 minutes. I thought of Kelly and her question, who protects the people when the people in charge are the ones doing the wrong thing? "Good evening," I said, in my teacher voice, the one you use to tell a room they are safe. "Michael Turner. History teacher. I've been at Brookside 12 years. I love this school. It's my second home. I also love the truth, which is why I'm here." I said I have documents. People sat up the way people sit up when someone says we have pie. I didn't accuse anyone of anything at first. I described processes and dates, like a man talking about rainfall. I laid out the Triad invoices. I pointed out the weekend retreat that did not exist. I placed, gently and without adjectives, the procurement card charges that matched a resort and not a campus. I let the microphone hear an audio clip in which my principal suggested massaging a data point that belonged to a federal report. I did not look at Rachel. I did not say her name. I said our principal and our psychologist because I like plural possessives, they remind people they own this place. People whispered because people are people. A board member who prides himself on being slow to react took off his glasses and cleaned them with a tie that had sailed past coffee stains long ago. The superintendent raised a finger like a traffic cop and said, "Mr. Turner, we should move this to closed session." "I agree," I said. "But I cannot, in good conscience, pretend it isn't also a public matter. Our budget is public. Our ethics are public. Our credibility is public. I'm not here because I like drama. I'm here because the students deserve adults who follow the rules they teach." Rachel finally looked at me. Her face tried 3 expressions and settled on board. She whispered something to the superintendent. He whispered something back. An attorney leaned into the microphone and made the usual noises about process and due diligence, and we take these allegations seriously. "My binder is tabbed," I said. "You should have a copy anyway, in about 30 seconds." I nodded to Fran, who, with the efficiency of a woman who has distributed essays for 40 years, handed board members folders with my exhibits, color-coded like a fair. I stepped away. My legs remembered how to be legs. People clapped, then pretended they hadn't. The board went into closed session so fast the motion left a wind. The audience murmured like a beehive disguised as a church. I stood in the parking lot under a lamp that has flickered since we replaced it in 2017 and watched my breath make little ghosts. They called me back in after an hour. Rachel wasn't on the dais anymore. The superintendent's smile had retired to bokeh. The board president, a woman with the voice of your favorite aunt, read a statement. Pending an investigation, Principal Rachel Turner and psychologist Ethan Myers are placed on administrative leave. An independent auditor will review site-level financials for the last 2 fiscal years. We will cooperate fully with any state authorities. In the meantime, Vice Principal Hernandez will serve as acting principal. I did not pump a fist. I did not smile. I went home and graded essays about the Boston Tea Party while the dishwasher hummed. The house was very quiet. Investigations, when done by adults who know how, do not take forever. State licensing bodies do not enjoy being lied to. Numbers, under bright light, tell stories so simple even school boards understand. The auditors found what I had found and what I had missed, because auditors are truffle pigs for mischief. There were padded invoices, there were reimbursements for spa treatments listed as team building, there were lost receipts that seemed to find their way into Ethan's glove compartment. There was a student activity fund that had become a personal slush during certain weekends. Rachel's defense, when it came, was that everyone does it, or that she had delegated it, or that the intent was noble. The board's defense was to hire a lawyer and nod. The town's reaction was a chorus of "I knew something was off" and "bless his heart." It was Brookside. We performed the rituals. The licensing committee met in a beige room in the county building. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige coffee. Rachel wore gray like she meant to disappear into professionalism. Ethan wore remorse like a scarf. They spoke. Their lawyer spoke. The auditor spoke. I spoke last, because apparently the state believes in climaxes. I didn't roast them. I didn't need to. I read numbers. I played a 30-second clip. I reminded them of the weekend that offered no retreat. The committee voted to suspend their licenses pending a longer-term review. In practical terms, they were out. In emotional terms, I wanted to cry for the first time since I was 15 and broke my arm on the monkey bars. I didn't. I went and bought a cup of coffee so bad it felt punitive and drank it like communion. Brookside is a small town. Shame travels faster than Wi-Fi. Rachel, who had for years been the one people whispered about as a force, got turned into a headline: Brookside principal placed on leave amid financial probe. Ethan became a byline. Their friends went quiet. The school, which had pulled away from me during the strange months like a child unsure of a dog, swung back with a sudden hunger. "Mr. Turner," kids said in the hall, like it was a compliment. Teachers brought me casseroles as if courage runs on carbs. I kept teaching. We did the Progressive Era with political cartoons and the Cold War with a fake hotline phone I found at a flea market. I stopped flinching during announcements. I stopped looking behind me when I walked into a room. The board needed a new principal. They hired a consultant who wore scarves and said vision alignment 5 times in 5 minutes. They blew money on a job posting that used phrases like transformational leader and community partner. They formed a committee. The committee asked if I would serve, which is funny if you like your humor dry. I said yes. The consultant put my name in the hat. I took it out. The superintendent put it back in. I took it out again. The board president called me at home and used her aunt voice. "Michael," she said, "the staff wants you. The students want you. The town wants you. We need someone to make this place feel like school again." "I like my classroom," I said. "You can have a bigger one," she said. I spent a night staring at the ceiling. I pictured the office, the paperwork, the meetings, the emails with subject lines that looked like dental work. I pictured the cafeteria lunch ladies who had fed me on bad days. I pictured the custodian who had unflooded my room after a sprinkler had mutinied. I pictured the teachers who had watched me take a beating in public and brought me muffins anyway. I pictured kids. Always kids. The lion stirred and yawned. I said yes. There is hubris in every promotion. There is also gratitude. I stood in my new office the first morning and touched the desk like it might buck. I hung a photo of my grandmother, who worked the register at a hardware store and used to tell me, "Stand up straight, Mike. Slouching makes liars of us all." I put the owl statue on the window ledge. I asked Denise, the bookkeeper, for the keys to the petty cash box and hugged them like a puppy. I made a short speech to staff, the kind you can fit between coffee sips. "Hi," I said. "It's still me. I still believe in more recess and better verbs. We're going to do boring things well again, budgets, boundaries, bell schedules. We'll put students first in ways that don't require posters. We'll audit ourselves like adults. We'll listen. We'll forgive. We'll also have fun, because learning without fun is a chore, and I don't believe in assigning chores I wouldn't do." Then I did the most radical thing I could. I walked the halls. I stood in doorways. I watched learning happen and said nothing. I shook hands in the cafeteria and asked kids who made their shoes. I invited the jazz band to practice in the courtyard. I told the librarian to buy weird books. I told the counselor who had been overshadowed by Ethan that she ran the show now, and she ran it like a pro. Respect, in a school, is not a standing ovation. It's quieter and better. It's a kid who used to skip second period showing up 5 days in a row. It's a teacher leaving a post-it that says "Thank you for backing me up with that parent." It's parents breathing out when you say "We will call you back today." It's the custodian getting a new floor buffer because you found $900 by canceling a dumb subscription to Leadership Weekly. Rachel left town. Ethan left the profession. Their names lingered in the air like the after smell of a candle, but eventually even that went. People will always remember, because people write history whether or not they intend to. But the present, bless it, is greedy, and our present wanted first downs and theater tickets and band competitions and a new mural painted by seniors on the back wall of the gym. I kept a copy of the binder in my office, not on display, just close. Sometimes a kid would come in, shoulders up, ready to confess something small that felt big. They'd talk. I'd listen. When they'd ask how I knew what to do when the person in charge wasn't doing the right thing, I'd say, "The same way you know what to do when a friend lies to you. You breathe. You gather facts. You tell the truth in the right room. Then you get back to work." When graduation came that spring, I stood at the podium and watched my former students look ridiculous in mortarboards they would pretend to hate and secretly keep forever. I told a short story about a quiet freshman who asked the best question I'd heard in a decade. I told them the answer. We do. We protect each other. People ask if I'm happy. Happy is a carnival word. I am steady. I am proud. I am amused by my own life. I am divorced, yes. I am also a man who stops by his old classroom in the mornings just to smell the books and the dust. The new teacher keeps my sticky notes in a jar, like a relic. He told me he uses the salt and pepper shakers for the Civil War. I told him to make sure Grant gets the pepper, because the kids enjoy that more. Brookside feels like a school again. That is the best compliment I can give the place. The lights hum in the right way. The copier jams only twice a day. The owl statue still looks like it knows everything. Denise still rules petty cash with an iron fist and a velvet cardigan. The band sounds slightly off in the best, bravest way when they warm up. On my first day with principal on the door, a kid walked by and said, "Hey, Mr. Turner, Principal Turner, Mr. T," then blushed like he'd stolen something. I laughed and said, "Mr. Turner works fine. Keep it simple." He nodded and jogged to class, backpack flapping like a flag. History is not what happened. It's what we remember and how we tell it. Here's mine. A man loved a woman who loved power. She tried to set him on fire. He learned to use water. He documented. He spoke up. The town did not throw him a parade, but it did hand him a key and a job. He walked the halls and made sure the bells rang on time. He learned that the best revenge is a school that works and the best closure is the sound of teenagers laughing on a Tuesday. On my desk sits a little wooden lion a student carved in shop and painted with a wonky grin. It reminds me of the day the lion woke up in my chest and told me to stop acting like a substitute in my own life. I pet its head some mornings before the emails start. It is a silly ritual. It works. I still believe in the smell of old books. I still believe in sticky notes and primary sources and the kindness of quiet people. I still believe, very much, in telling the truth in the right room. If you ever find yourself in Brookside on a Thursday morning, stop by. We have jazz in the courtyard and a principal who will, with great pleasure, show you the binder that saved his life, then hide it away and take you on a tour of a school that remembers why it exists. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.